Hello 2360 students. I hope everyone is having a great week. So I just wanted to jump on to talk to you about what we're going to be doing this week. So just to recap, last week we were working on Module 4, which we had to plan for inclusion, right? So we also were learning about how do we support students in their transition. So we started doing the second component of our case study project work. So at this point, we're using the same child. The first part of our case study project, you were to research the child's disability. I provided you with much information about that child, their background, their disability, and their needs. And you created a PowerPoint about that disability. You look at the prevalence, you looked at supports in the classroom, supports for the parents, some resources, what are some environmental considerations, some educational considerations, what kind of social emotional supports that you have. So we did that. Then this past week, this past module, these past 2 weeks, you were working on really implementing what we call a transition plan. So when we have a child that is transitioning, that means they're going to go from one school setting or maybe a home setting into a school, or maybe from home to a Head Start or a preschool, or maybe they're going from preschool into an elementary setting. So when we do that, we have a sending team and a receiving team. And it's important for the sending team to give as much information and support to the receiving team as possible. So the point is we want to transition that child and make it as seamlessly as possible and less painful and less stress for the family and the child. So it's important for us to put a plan in place. And there's lots of elements that we had to look at and what kind of goals we were setting. So that was what our work was. Just to recap, I also told you in last week's module or last couple weeks, I would send in this video, I would talk a little bit more about the inclusive practices field work. I want to do that before I jump into module 5, which is what we're going to be working on. So field work is normally where you go into a school setting and you complete hours, right? And that is going to allow you to put into practice what you are learning in class. However, this field work, you are going to be looking at some videos. So to get to this field work, and this is something that you should either started on or at least read, last couple weeks you should have at least read the assignment. So to get to it, it is going to be underneath Module 1, Getting Started. You'll see it says Inclusive Practices Fieldwork, and then underneath it says Video. So I want you to click on Inclusive Practices Fieldwork. What this is this allowing you to actually dive a little bit deeper into what inclusive practices would look like in an early childhood setting. So normally, when you typically go out into an early childhood setting, you get placed in a school, and that setting would be with one age level group. With this fieldwork practice, you actually get to look at multiple disabilities and special needs, and you look at multiple age level groups. So this actually is giving you more than you would had you went into the classroom itself. Plus another positive is we have to think about the time commitment and scheduling that you have, because many of us already work in a school. And many times when you do field work, you can't use all of your hours where you work in your own site. You have to go outside of your site. And this is always not conducive in those situations, especially in an online course like you're taking here. So with this practice, this is going to really explore the practices needed when you're working in inclusive classrooms, especially in early childhood settings, okay? So we're looking at how do we develop a more inclusive but an accessible environment for all children. So you're going to complete this through the process of viewing videos, right, as a reflective piece. And the 3 different age groups we're going to be looking at is going to be toddler, infant toddler, we're going to look at the preschool age, and then we're going to look at like the pre-K age. So this is going to allow us to view videos multiple times in these settings. And we're going to be observing best practices within these videos. And you're going to be really looking at if what you're seeing is serving that child well, right? So you're going to evaluate the four important aspects in an early childhood setting when you're working with students with disabilities. You're going to be looking at the engagement of the individualized instructional supports for that child. You're going to be looking at observing the UDL principles. Now, UDL stands for Universal Design for Learning, which is what you're going to be learning about in this course. So is it encompassing that? You're going to be looking at the supportive learning environments underneath that UDL principles. You're going to look at those positive, supportive relationships between the child and the educator. And what are those interactions? What do they look like? And the last thing is our collaboration, not only with the families, but also with other professionals and practitioners and our partners. So what does partnerships look like? So those are the four aspects that are really important in inclusive practices. And you're going to be viewing and seeing these within those 3 age level groups. Okay, so the whole point of this is for you to get an understanding and reflect on this of what inclusion is and what does it mean to you as a future educator. So there is a reflection paper that you will be completing for this project. Now, this is a key assessment, meaning that this is important. It's following the NAEYC professional standards and competencies. I put the standards there for you under NAEYC, so you'll have them. I even put instructions here that you are going to read and walk through how do I actually complete this field work, okay? So this whole field work is based on the Universal Design for Learning framework, right, in specifically early childhood environments. These are including the interactions between the teacher and the children and those supports put in place. This is going to ask you to look at the experience of the child that has disabilities in an inclusive classroom, okay? So you're going to be observing students who have many diverse needs and different age groups. Like I mentioned, there's 3 different age levels. When you're completing this, you're going to be asked to evaluate these inclusive practices that you're observing, right, by watching these videos. Now, this is going to give you a more broader range and show you more diversity than you would if you, like I mentioned, were in a setting that was chosen for you or that you chose. So you're going to observe 3 different age levels: toddler, preschool, and then primary K3, okay? So there's multiple videos within each age level, okay? So you are going to look at, there's only 1 toddler video, so everyone has to view that one. But then the preschool, you have 3 options to be viewed, but you're going to look at least 2 of them. In the primary K3, there's 3 options, but again, you're going to look at 2 of them. So while you're watching videos, take notes, right? Take notes about each section using the Universal Design for Learning checklist. And what this is going to do is really going to provide you guidance in determining if it's in fact effective inclusion, right? And you're going to be writing about those 4 important aspects under UDL, right? The engagement, the individualized instructional supports. You're going to be looking at, are you seeing these UDL principles put in place in their supporting learning environments? Looking at the interactions, are they positive and supportive between the child and the teacher and other partnerships with families? And looking at those specific partnerships with families and other professionals. And based on your notes, you're going to really reflect on your understanding of inclusion and what it means to you as a future teacher. And you will put that in your reflection paper. Now, the reflection paper you're going to write has 3 sections. You got section 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you'll notice they are labeled as those sections in the UDL principles, right? So section 1 will be engagement, individualized instructional supports. Section 2, observing the use of UDL principles to support learning environments. Okay, and then you have the other 2. The last section is going to be your reflection and perspectives. So please make sure you label your paper like this format below, okay? Now, in each section of the paper, you're going to see there are guiding questions and things for you to think about. and it specifically gives you a definition of what engagement individualized instructional supports would be. It gives you examples. For instance, engagement is defined as the amount of time children spend involved within the environment. This is with adults, peers, or materials. And this is in a way that's appropriate for the child's age, abilities, and surroundings, right? So it's talking about what that is, the engagement. And then it gives you guiding questions which you would answer in your paper, right? So when you are viewing this video, we said it's important for you to take notes. So you'll have that universal design for learning checklist, right? And you're also going to make sure that you're answering these questions. And when you are looking at the videos, make sure you're referring to a video in each grade level, right? So you're going to include examples of these inclusive practices, right? Engagement, individualized instructional supports. Talk about the different age levels, right? You're going to observe the videos, describe what you saw and how it supports the inclusive practice. You're going to refer to multiple videos, right? You have to have a minimum of 2 videos that you are giving examples for, and label those by numbers. And it should be at least from 2 of the videos in the age ranges. And you're going to go through and you'll see each section is going to have examples and defines what each principle is encompassing. And it will have guiding questions for you, okay, that you are going to answer in your paper. Okay, so I wanted to note something here. In section 2 of your paper here, where it says observing the use of UDL principles to support learning environments, I'm going to actually break down the environments for you, right? So physical environment, social, and temporal. Those are the 3 environments that we're looking underneath those UDL principles. Here is the UDL checklist. Taking a minute to load, guys, sorry. Okay, so have this checklist open with you when you're doing this. Make sure that you are seeing and looking at, okay, the physical environment, okay? So there are 3 environments in the Universal Design for Learning that support the child's ability to learn. We've got physical, social, and temporal. This gives you examples of those, and the elements and the supports that would be following that. So for instance, let's look specifically at physical environment. This includes the design of the physical layout of the space, the arrangement, the furniture, and resources, as well as looking at floor color, coverings, lighting, and creation of the learning centers and the organization of them and how they're laid out. How does the student access the materials? Are there opportunities indoor and outdoor? Okay. How are the materials constructed and presented to them? Are they provoking, inviting, encouraging exploration, learning, and inquiry? How is the classroom arranged, the furniture, the equipment? How are the students interacting with the equipment? Are they on the floor? Are they able to stand? Looking at how the class is laid out, right? Are they selecting equipment and materials that support the child with purposeful learning? And then it gives you the elements under physical environment, right? And then it gives you some extended supports plus technology, okay? And you're going to see there's quite a bit under physical because this is important. And then we have the social environment, right? So these are the relationships and interactions between the children and the teacher and other teachers, the teacher and the parents, peer-to-peer, and you're going to see some examples of these UDL under social environment. Are you seeing these in the classroom in these videos? And then it gives you an idea of some extended supports and technology. So these are things you're going to be looking for in the videos. And the last one is temporal, right? So this is how the daily structure goes through, like the routines, the transitions, the activities. So you're going to be looking at those in the video. Okay, so have that open, and you're also going to answer these questions. And you have that UDL checklist with you while you're watching the video so you can take notes. Because remember, in the paper, not only are you answering these questions and thinking about them, but you're also going to be giving me examples of the UDL stuff you're seeing inside of the videos, and you're referring to at least 2 videos. The only one that you would only refer to one on is the infant toddler, because there's only one video to talk about. With the preschool and then the primary K3, there's 3 videos, but I want you to talk about at least 2 of them. And you'll see as you go down here, you'll go through the other 4 UDLs, but then at the bottom, it's going to be your personal reflection, okay? And I gave you some guiding questions you're going to answer to think about. And then at the end, I did give you a rubric, okay? Please read the rubric. I always tell students to read it twice. First, read it to see what I'm looking for. Work on your inclusive practices, answer it, look at the UDL checklist, watch the videos multiple times. When you get through and you think you're finished, go back and look at the rubric again. See if you're meeting these expectations. I did want to note something on the rubric. When you're looking at the rubric, a lot of students meet expectations, but to meet expectations, you have to have all of the things in the middle, all the components. You answered all the questions, you're looking at the video multiple times, you're using the UDL checklist. But if you want to exceed, you're going to do all these things and this, okay? So both sides. That's how you meet exceeds expectations. So those are things to look like. You do all those and you do these things. That is what we're looking at when we say exceeds expectations. So that will be your inclusive practice fieldwork. So if you're in inclusive practice fieldwork, I did give you an explanation video. A lot of stuff I said just now and walked through is stuff that I talked about in the video, but please go back and watch that as well as reading over the instructions. Here are the videos. It's right underneath. You'll click on it and you will see that there are the videos I was talking about that you will watch. There's the links to the videos. Okay, so if you'll notice here on the toddler, okay, and these videos are numbered, so when you're doing your paper, you're going to number them, okay? Number 1, Lydia Rose, and when we preschool, there's 3 of them, right? Within the primary pre-K3, there's 3 videos, okay? So whenever we say number them, you're just numbering the video so we know which video you're referring to when you're giving us examples of what was happening. So that kind of covers what inclusive practices is. This field work is going to be due November the 5th, right? So you have until then to do it. That's why I mentioned 2 weeks ago to start looking at it and start working on it and looking at the instructions and the rubrics. So if you haven't started on it and you've not even taken time to look at the inclusive practices fieldwork assignment, please do that because you will have to complete this and it will be turned in November the 5th. All right, so let's move on to Module 5. Okay, so Module 5 is opening on October 9th, so on Monday, and it will end on October 22nd. So again, you have those 2 weeks to complete it. So let's go ahead and go over Module 5 and what we're going to be working on. Anytime I start a new module, I always like to look at the overview because this gives me an idea of where we're going. So this Module 5 is really talking about, okay, now we have my transition plan in place. Well, now we have to go ahead and implement the program. Okay, so this is really going to address those topics associated with the planning and the teaching that goes on into the classroom. So the first thing we're going to look at is some of the areas for learning, right, which planning takes place. So we're going to look at those self-help and adaptive skills, communication and literacy, and those academic areas of learning, which would also include math. Okay, this even talks a little bit about an overview of technology, assistive technology, and some opportunities that you would have in the classroom to use these strategies. So what we're going to do is, as always, you are going to complete another project with your case study. So with the case study this time, you're going to do the embedded opportunities. So you're looking at those learning skills, how we implement these into our classrooms for early childhood and inclusive classrooms. So let's go ahead and go into the first lesson and look at that. Okay, One thing I did want to note too, and each time we start a new module, I put this at the top before you get into the lessons. I always give you some objectives where we're going, right? So with module 5, we're really looking at describe the methods of helping children with disabilities, teaching them learning those self-help skills, describing the language and communication needs of children with disabilities, describing the different instructional and strategies for supporting those children with disabilities in those inclusive environments. How do we embed those individual goals into our daily schedules and routines? And then we also are going to define those assistive technologies and recognize low and high tech examples. Okay, so all of these objectives for Module 5 is relating back to our course outcomes, right? How can we identify the recommended practices and elements for inclusive early childhood programs? Know and understand the cause, classification, and characteristics of developmental disabilities. And then the last course outcome, know and understand how to work effectively with a multidisciplinary team in an effort to coordinate an appropriate educational program integrating parents, school, and community resources. I gave you guiding questions to consider in each lesson, lesson 5.1 and lesson 5.2, right? So read those. I'm not going to go through it for the sake of time. Okay, I also tell you in Module 5 you will have reading chapters. This will be broken up into the 2 weeks. So make sure, and I also always give you extra things for you to look at. This IRIS module is really good, talking about dual language learner with disabilities. So where English is not their first language. Some recommended practice modules are also there if you wanted to look at it as an extra supplemental support. Okay, I have some vocabulary terms down here that is represented to our content for this module. Okay, so in Module 5.1, we're really looking at, like I said, those adaptive skills. What are those self-help skills? How do we embed it into our actual program, our routine, our schedule? What is task analysis, and how do we use that in an inclusive classroom? What kind of strategy is this and how this is a help, especially looking at early childhood classrooms? Looking at independent toileting and how this is important. How do we facilitate communication skills and teach that? And not only communication skills for academics, but just for being a self-independent learner and telling their needs of what throughout the day. And what kind of opportunities do we have throughout the day to help the child meet those goals? Then we're going to look about English language learners and how this affects students with disabilities in an inclusive classroom. And how do we communicate those self-help skills and teach them those embedded skills that they need? And then STEM, right? How is this related to young children with disabilities, and how do we incorporate that into our classroom? And lastly, we have assistive technology. Okay, so what is assistive technology? How do we use it in an inclusive classroom, especially working with little ones? What are the benefits? Where does this money come from? Who pays for it? And does it really have an impact when we're talking about working with young children? The second lessons where we really start getting into those strategies and supports, right? That's going to help put that inside of our embedded assignment for our case study. What are those recommended practices and instructional modules, right, that we should be implementing in inclusive classrooms? We're going to look at what is the strategy of pause and think. Pause and think. What does that acronym stand for, and how is this going to help me? And what is this strategy going to do working with early childhood students who have disabilities? So those will be your 2 lessons. I always say make sure when you're doing your modules that you're breaking it up, because it can be overwhelming at first when you see all of this. But remember, you have 2 weeks to do the entire module. So always break it up. 1 week work on one, maybe 1 week work on the other. So here are going to be your assignments, things that you have to submit to me, okay? So you have your Module 5 quiz, as always, okay? Then we're going to be looking at Module 5 case study, which is going to be your assignment that you're working with the same students. So whoever you decided to do your disability PowerPoint on, when you do the transition plan this past 2 weeks, you're still using that same case study child. So you'll notice here underneath case study embedded opportunity, you have case study child goals. Those goals will go with this activity. So let's click on the first one and I'll explain. So for this case study project, it's worth 25 points, okay? I did give you a rubric here at the bottom showing you how you'll be graded, so please make sure you look at that. So for this assignment, it's going to be due October 22nd, and this is where we're really going to put those strategies, those instructional strategies and methods. How can we embed these opportunities into our regular schedule and with the goals that we have and objectives for that child and for the classroom? So to complete this, you're really going to have to use the forms that I gave you, okay? I give you forms to help you complete. So the first step, one, I've put steps in here and walk you through. There's 3 steps that I want you to look at. The first step of this project is looking at what we call a matrix form, okay? So this form, I will open it up. It's going to download. And you should be able to type in it. So this is what the form will look like. This is the matrix of embedded goal activities. Now remember, all these forms will have to be used to complete this assignment. So let's go back to where we were. Okay. In this form, you are going to put the child's name and the classroom that this is planned for at the top of the form. And you can enable editing so you can top it. So the child's name and the classroom. The next thing you're going to do is write the child's IFSP. Now remember, IFSP is the Family Support Plan. Then the IEP is the Individualized Education Plan. Okay, so it's going to depend on what age level your case study child falls under, okay, of which one you'll have. And you will put that at the top of each blank column. Okay, so you'll see here, it'll be at the top of each column. Now, the next thing you're also going to do is you're going to list the goals in the case study section. Okay, so there's a thing in our class. So if we go back, into table of contents, and we go back to module 5. And I would just have it pulled up in a separate tab so you'll have it when you're going through so it's not hard to find. So when you click on module 5, you go all the way bottom and you're going to see case study child goals. You're going to have to use this to complete the matrix form and to complete the second step and third step. So here are the goals. You're going to pick the goal that's related to your case study child. Okay, so you're going to use this to help you embed activities or opportunities in that program for that child. So what we're going to do is go back. So like I said, just have it pulled up to the side, a new tab, so you can easily get to it as you're working on this. So after you write the goals, it's important for you to remember that when you're working in a team, that if you abbreviate anything, all group member parties understand what the goal is, okay, and what plans are to embed into the goal. On the left column, you're going to write the primary event or activities or routines, basically your schedule for that program. And then you're going to find if the child's case study introductory story in module 3. Okay, that's where you had all the child's information. You may not need all the roles, but if you do need all the rows or you need extra, you can add them. Now, the last part of the matrix form is after you put your schedule and you put the goals and all that, you're going to have to decide if these goals can be addressed in a certain activity. In other words, you're going to mark box with an X if you can have that goal embedded in a certain time of the day for that child, okay? If that goal can be worked on during that time of the day. So when you look at your schedule, right, here's arrival, you're going to write down the times, so everything that you do throughout the day, your schedule, and then here are the goals. So maybe say the child only has 3 goals. Remember, I gave you the goals there on Module 5. So you're going to write what those goals are, and then you're going to look and put an X next to each one if you can meet it during that time of the day. The second step after you do that is you are going to target those embedded goals into a planning form, okay? So this form is going to help you address the supports needed environmental, by you instructional, and even peer supports. So you can click on it and it'll open up in a new document. Okay, so you're going to see the planning form here. So what you're going to do is put one of the goals for the child, the activity, routine, event, and then you're going to put the strategy you're going to put in place. So when you're looking at the strategy, it's like, what are you using to make sure you're supporting the child? So you're going to look at the teacher supports, the peer supports, and the environmental supports. And then you're going to write down a second goal, and you're going to do the same thing as you walk through. So it's important for you to figure out, when can we make sure that we're meeting these goals? What time of day? How am I? What's the strategy we're using? What are supports put in place in the environment? What are the teacher supports going to be put in place? And then what peer supports will be added? Okay. So on each form, 1 and 2, there's 2 of them there. So make sure you get both of them. That you describe the strategy and method, right? That you are using these to help the child learn and practice the skills they needed to achieve the goal. So here's an example of what an embedded opportunity plan form will look like. Okay, so one of the goals we have for this child is he will initiate communication to meet daily needs and routines and activities. So we plan to put this in during breakfast and lunch. So to complete this goal and to help him be more communicate well, we're going to have what we call family style meal service. We're going to all sit at a table, prepare food together. So here's the strategy we put in place for Henry. He will communicate what he wants more of a food item by requesting a peer to pass the serving dish. Here are some of the environmental supports we put for Henry to help him reach his goal. We're going to use picture cards of food items in serving bowls, and this is going to help him be able to communicate what he wants more of. Well, how will I as a teacher support them? Well, we're going to show the whole group, we're going to show all the children the picture cards of the menu board before we have each meal. And then when he points to a serving bowl, we're going to prompt him to ask or say one of his classmates' name and a picture card and show it to his peer. And then we're going to reiterate this by saying, you can say or show the picture card of what you want. Now, how will the peers support that child? Well, maybe you practice this as a whole class using serving bowls and requesting peer, and they're going to model that for Henry so he can see. And they're going to help him as well by saying, Henry, do you want me to pass the green beans? So that's how they're helping. So that's one example. So the last part of this assignment is really how you're going to monitor to see if these goals are working. So this is where you collect data. So you're going to use one of the plans. Okay, so here's an example here. There is a form for you to look at, and it will download. Okay, so this is just what it looks like. You're going to put what the activity is, the goal, and you're going to collect data, the behavior skills exhibited, how long will the data be collected, which method will you use, how frequently will you do it, and by who. So here's an example of one. We're going back to using Henry. This is happening during mealtime, so that's our activity. We again put his goal here. And then these are behavior skills that we want to be exhibited by Henry, right? We want him to request more food. The skills are going to be prompted and unprompted. Okay, how long will this be going on? Okay, you're going to count. How frequently? Twice a day during breakfast and lunch. And who will be the one conducting this data to see if he does it? Okay, so when you're doing data collection, here's one of the optional ways you can collect it. This is something that's used for those if you're doing like, if you have a goal for eating or communicating about food. This is one of the ways that you can use this form. So here's what you have to submit, okay? You're going to submit to Dropbox a matrix of the embedded opportunities, okay, which was step 1. You're going to complete that form and put it in Dropbox. You are going to use 2 completed embedded learning planning forms, step 2, okay? Remember, there's only one that came up, but you can use 2 of them. And then the last thing is 1 plan for monitoring and assessing to see if these plans are working, okay? And that is step 3. So that looks like this. So only 1 of those. And you will submit that to Dropbox. So remember, use your rubric to help you. So that's going to be your assignment for this module, which you have 2 weeks to do it. So this will be due on October 22nd. All right, guys, I'm going to try to find some examples for you to look at that might be helpful that I will send out in a class email. So, and also refer back to this video here. I'll put it on the course homepage and I'll email you, say, hey, just watch the video. I uploaded it for module 5. And as always, you can meet with me on Teams, a phone call. Reach out if you're having trouble or you're struggling with the case study assignments, because I know I put due dates for stuff, but I'd rather it be due a day or 2 later and submitted then, and you really understand and we take time to meet, than for you to just submit it and you not know what's going on. Because this says early childhood educator is important for you to understand how to do these things and why these are important. So if you have trouble, please don't hesitate to reach out. All right, guys, so get busy starting on your Module 5, which is going to be your homework, the case study assignment, the embedded opportunity, and then I also want you to start working on your field work. All right, guys, until next time, take care.